I would like to thank all of you for participating on the live stream tonight and chatting. All right, everybody, you have joined the Velvet Bite Radio live stream with our Tuesdays Occult Study series. This episode is called The Season of the Witch and Politics. Remember, we'll be live with you very shortly, so give a click on the thumbs up and make sure to share and add it to your favorite playlist. And subscribe to the Substack, melissadonharris.substack.com. All right, everybody, we are live here again on the Velvet Bite. A little bit early tonight. We are doing the Occult Studies show on a Thursday night starting at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight because it's a normal time we do this. I know it may be irregular for some of you, but bear with me. A little few announcements before we get into the core, the argument. I'll present it to you. You know, we're talking about not just witchcraft, but this whole arc of religious eras throughout time and how the current religious era came to be and how it obviously targeted and why it targeted and looked at other eras. And so we will get into that in a moment. But first, of course, I'm always going to encourage everyone to support this show. And I know a lot of people don't have oodles of money. So there's, no reason that you still can't support it. Whether you subscribe on Substack for free or you thumbs up this show, or you share it, add it to a playlist, participate in the chat, even just say a wave, a hello, or if you're coming after the stream and you simply just put a comment saying great show or I love this or your thoughts. I spent probably a good week researching this and then a good couple of days putting this all together. So it does take time. So I appreciate when someone leaves the comments, the thumbs up, saves it to their watch later. All that stuff tells YouTube that you want to see this show. And of course, I'm always encouraging everybody to go over to melissadonharris.substack.com, subscribe for free. You can become a paid member. There's exclusives there for everyone. For instance, I did a tab over there, by the way, that is called the loyalty rewards. So there's a whole archive right on my Google Drive. Like there's probably about 20 magazines that I've designed over the years available, all about Forteana, folklore, witchcraft, politics, a lot of the PDFs from this show. The PDF presentation from this show that I'm going to show you will be over there. You can go get it if you're a paid subscriber. I'm also putting a lot of mini clip and video footage archived in another folder there for people. So simply go to melissadonharris.substack.com. Lots of free stuff for you. And the audio podcast will always be there. I've got a little bit of announcement for Spotify people. They probably won't hear this. I'm going to put it up, but I'm having some issues with the files. And I have been unsatisfied with the audio version of the podcast. The sound quality is pretty good on the live stream. And when I download this onto my system, the sound quality is still good. When I put it in my editing system as an M4A, the sound quality is good. But once I export it into an MP3, crackle, snap, pop, like Rice Krispie crazy, like awful. And I'm sure it's annoying. And I've been catching it and I've seen some comments about it. And I want to apologize One of the reasons I was doing it as an MP3 is Spotify only wants you to have MP3s. Everywhere else is fine with the M4As. So the M4As are working fine. So I'm uploading the M4As, but that means right now, because I don't want to pay for another system, that the show won't be on Spotify. So I encourage everybody to go over to Substack and subscribe for free, because the podcast will always be there for free. I just uploaded the M4A on all platforms and the sound is fine. It's just for whatever reason, when I'm transferring out to MP3, I can't figure out why it's doing that. So that's a little bit of an announcement. Spotify, sorry, you need to carry M4A for me, but you probably won't. There's a reason why they're doing it. It has something to do with the quality and how it degrades over time, but we'll see about that. I'll check that out later, but yeah, the Substack is the place to go, Spotify people. And I love Spotify. I have Spotify, so it's unfortunate. But the audio will be available on all other platforms. So that's that announcement. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys about, and if you're not catching this live and you're catching this later, let me know. I did some analysis on when my main audience is showing up, and I'll pop it up here for you guys before we get into the meaty part. I want to do this. It gives people a chance to get in here anyways, because a lot of times YouTube doesn't even alert people for a while. This is the peak times. And as you can see on Tuesday, there's only one little realm of peak time and then it dwindles out. But Wednesday and Thursday are like peak. So let me know if you think it's a good idea for me to move the Tuesday show to a Wednesday around 5, because there's a lot of people still around YouTube at that time. And the Thursday show might keep it the same, but you can see these light purple bars here are when my audience is really active. And on Sundays, maybe I should do like a Church of Velvet Bite on Sundays at like at like 2 or 3 p.m. We'll do the Church of Velvet Bite. The Sunday ones. Hello, Kirby. Thank you for showing up on the show. We've got Incognito in the house. Thank you for being here, Incognito. John Aside is driving right now, but he's listening. Thank you for being here in heart. And unfortunately, Ace Freely, he was in a coma or something like that on life support, and apparently he has passed away. So rest in peace, Ace Freely. I believe he was of Kiss. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a rock and roll person. You know what? I'm out of touch with everything lately. I'm going in my own world. The more I've seen politics, and like I've told you guys, I was in a lot of mega groups, interacting with a lot of these evangelists for a couple of years, and the last year and a half, I knew it was going down, and I knew things were infiltrated. I knew that this was all an act, and no one would really listen to me. So I had to set it all aside and be like, see you later, guys. Good luck to you all. And, I personally feel evangelists are being manipulated and used right now, but, I hope the best for everyone. But this stream that I'm going to do will show you why I don't think Christianity is going to save us from the New World Order as well. And you'll see on my presentation why I think that. And honestly, it took me a while. I was thinking, how am I going to do the show? Am I just going to, vampire, Erzek. Tonight is not the vampire. It's a little more occultic. We're looking at witchcraft, but shout out to the vamps for sure. You're part of the bite here, guys. You're part of the bite. Thank you. Anyways, I was like, how am I going to do this? Because we see lots of stuff on witchcraft and witch hunting and Matthew Hopkins and the witch burning. And we know a lot of those details. And I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to say this? And I thought, you know what? I was doing a lot of research and looking at a lot of content. And I was on this show that my husband had told me about. He heard it on the Higher Side chat. And I have some compliments of it. I have some criticism of one of his videos too. But I was watching him explain this over arc of the different religious phases that we've gone through. And I thought, that's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in a very much overview a large overview. I'm going to start there and I'll narrow in a little bit more and we'll come back out, because I think it's important to understand what's happening in our world by looking at the three major religious phases that we've gone through and why they changed and why things are changing now. And that will kind of give us a view of why these structures attacked old pagan religions or whatnot. And, I always say, there was a podcast and I can't remember what it was now. And he was saying that he was quoting some German philosopher or politician or something like that. And this German politician said that um, religion comes wrapped up in politics to get you. And I think I disagree. I think it's the opposite way. I think politics comes wrapped up in religion and spirituality to get you. Politics and other things and power struggles. I think it's the opposite. So I disagree with him, and I'm going to show you why in this presentation about the witchcraft and the politics and what has happened to our world and why we are where we are now. And of course, I've got some great video clips, but let's go to that overview first. Let's go look at the witchcraft and politics, season of the witch and politics, as this show is called. And we're going to go through those eras and explain what happened in our system to get us to this monotheistic stage that we're at, and why I am not hopeful that Christianity is going to save the day from the New World Order. So it's time to go over to our handy dandy PDF, which, by the way, if you are on Substack, this whole PDF is available for you in the archive if you're a paid Substack member. So don't forget that. So we got the season of the witch and politics. And before I go into this, hopefully more of you will stream in. I know I'm at that irregular time, but thumbs up, please. Save it to a playlist. Good to see you guys all here. And if you're watching this ahead of time after the stream and you couldn't catch it, leave a comment and let me know what you think of this sort of presentation and how you feel about the way of the world today. So we're going to start off by identifying basic 3 stages of religious development. And I'm speaking specifically to the Western world. China or any of these other places might be a lot different. So we're speaking basically of the West. And we have 3 phases. The first phase was the mother goddess phase. The second phase is polytheism. And the third phase, which we're in now, is monotheism. And I'm sure it's transferring to another, we might be developing another phase. And of course, as you'll know when we go through this, a lot of these phases are pushed forward by technology of the time and that kind of development. So let's get into what the mother goddess phase meant. Okay, so mother goddess. It's the worship of the mother goddess that is derived out of the invention of agriculture. So in this system, females have actually many partners. They are at the top of the structure. Actually, there is no top in this structure. It's not a pyramid-based structure. They don't look at things like that at all. See how monotheistic I am? I actually refer to it as that, and it's not that. Females in this culture, which is thousands of years ago, would have had many partners. Think of like the Venus of Willendorf, that kind of mother goddess figure, the womb as the sacred portal. Think of it that way. And the reason that a one female would have many male partners is she's trying to ensure the best reproduction rate. And she is worshipped as a representation of the mother goddess on the planet. So you needed more human births. And you needed that for harvesting crops and ensuring their growth and tending the land. It's one of the highest priorities. They've developed this technology and it creates some more stabilization, but you need to build the population. And so the female would have multiple partners. There was no nuclear family. That did not happen at this time. Like I said, the womb is the focus here in this religion, and it's viewed as a sacred portal to the spiritual world. And that's how the spirits come through in form into the human body, is through the womb. Interconnectivity is very important. The study of the movement of the stars becomes a focus at this period in time. It's a focus in terms of planning crops and deciding when you're going to have children. Females have a high status, like I said, and they're seen as direct representative of the mother goddess, and they're represented by a bird, a bird, because it kind of encompasses and flies in the sky. It's seen almost as having this magical power. So then you get into also bull energy is here. So you've got the bull, the bird as a female, and the bull obviously is the male energy. So mother goddess is the bird, dominion over the sky. The mother goddess is paired with the bull, the symbol of male virility, masculine energy, and of course the two, the bird and the bull, come together to create life. This is the crux of mother goddess. You see, it's pretty simplistically laid out. There's no idea of property here, and I'm sure that today's communists are all over this stuff. I'll explain to you why it's not going to work for them, but we'll get to that eventually. Everything belongs to everyone. There's no hierarchy. There's not a nuclear family concept yet. Sex is a group activity. Okay, they have fertility cults that form out of this. Fertility cults that are meant to worship the womb, worship fertility, and they start developing rituals around crops growing because this is literally the life that sustains them. It's pretty simplistic compared to polytheism, which is the next step. And so you're like, okay, why did they go to polytheism? We'll talk about what it is, but the simple answer why we switch from mother goddess to polytheism is one answer, and it's called war. And war sprouted out of the development of agriculture because you have this concept of land that you own, that you till, that you put all this hard work in, and you're the woman is having sex with multiple males. They're increasing the population. And so as the population increases, there's a struggle for land and resources. This results in war. You also, at this time, you had a lot of young men who were disenfranchised and they were living on the outskirts like little wolves, wolf pack. You see this in ancient Rome, like the bases of Rome, they have the wolf brothers, Romulus and stuff. This comes out of this mother goddess into polytheism concept where you have these males who are like threatening because they're aggressive and they don't have anything that ties them down. They're maybe not even mating with a woman. So what happens is they realize they need these men to protect the land and to go to war. So what they end up doing, they transfer things to this concept of, look, if you are willing to fight for our wars, you will get land and property as a result of it. And you'll get one of the most coveted resources at the time still was women. Women were a high resource because they were the portal to beyond. They were what life came through. That's how they seen it in this time. So you start forming this idea that men own land, men own a woman, and that woman can only have sex with that man. That concept that becomes a nuclear family starts forming out of agriculture. It's not because there's a bunch of men who, are necessarily misogynists. It's just a biological, response to everything, and they're trying to come up with solutions on how to best protect the tribe, protect the people, protect the land, sustain their food, protect their resources so they can continue on. And so the crux of polytheism is one where the women's role gets diminished. So she's not necessarily an all-important figure that is worshipped. They're starting to forget about that because they're so focused on protecting the land and the resources. And the man's role grows in dominance because of war to protect this resource that they have out of the discovery of agriculture. So you see these early civilizations in polytheism, they begin to clash over land, resources, women, and they start having their own gods. Okay, so they start having, you'll get all these different gods from all the different tribe. And when they go to war, the losing tribe, in order to keep peace, has to admit they're defeated. And so when they admit they're defeated, their god is less than the victor's god. So it's beneath their god in the structure. You start getting this hierarchy, right? So you have to keep the peace, you have to do that. So the victor absorbs the gods of the other tribes as beneath there. So you start getting something like in Rome, where they conquer all these different tribes eventually. Like, remember, Rome probably started out as a mother goddess cult or something similar to the Druids. And then they expand. So once Rome conquers all these lands, it starts absorbing all these other gods. So instead of these gods being equal, they have their Zeus on top, and all the other gods it absorbs from conquering lands becomes like Zeus's children. That's how they create the pantheon of gods. This is polytheism, where they have multi-gods, but the gods are not like monotheism. The gods are very human, and each god has a job and a role, and you would pray to each god to, give you what you wanted. So there'd be a god for the harvest, a god for the moon and the sun, a god for revenge and war, a god for wine. There'd be all these little gods that they're absorbing, right? And it creates the pantheon of gods. That is key to polytheism, is the pantheon, multi-gods that are responsible for multi-different jobs. And Zeus does sit at the top, Mount Olympus. He kind of got that. And that, of course, comes from Greek culture, which the Romans respected very much, but they conquered the Greeks. This arrangement did help maintain peace. And I mean, once the separate deities of older traditions were now woven together, reimagined as the children of Zeus. This sacred concept of the womb as a spiritual gateway gets lost here, though. It's replaced, and there starts to become a focus on material gain, of constantly conquering or absorbing. The mother goddess fell lower in a hierarchy, while the gods of war, embodied and exalted by man, rose to dominance on the battlefield. And then we have the third and final stage of monotheism. This is the rise of empire. Monotheism comes out of the rise of the Roman Empire. So as you have Rome, it starts kind of off as a republic, and then they actually have an emperor after Caesar. They execute him. We all know that, Julius Caesar. And it heralds the one God religion eventually of Christianity. And I don't know, my guess is that Christianity, it was a cult, and when it started, it was nothing like we see it today. My guess is the Gnostics are probably more close to what they were preaching, but when this Roman Empire started to kind of crumble a little bit, they had to absorb Christianity and kind of revive the empire, and they merged into monotheism and pushed it through the Catholic Church eventually throughout the whole empire. And when we come to monotheism, there's a massive change. There's a massive, and you'll see why I have no faith that we can not avoid the New World Order with it. We'll get into this. It's more centralized power. You start getting not just absorbing other religions in a pantheon. There's no pantheon now. They at first started to absorb gods and goddesses and turn them into saints. But you start to be like, no, there's no other gods. There's just one. And they start becoming more destructive as they go on. So empires become less concerned about people because they have so many of them. The Roman Empire would destroy societies, slaughter other pagans ruthlessly. They did so to the Druids, 100%. Now you don't just have to absorb the other gods, you can impose your gods onto others and just take them out. Their gods don't matter. You've got enough. And actually, now you just have one God. It's the Christian God. So now we're going to go with that, and you will worship that. It's authoritarian rule. It becomes more authoritarian than ever before. If you thought it was authoritarian at first, well, now you have to worship the one God. And yes, some people will think that Judaism was the first one God, but this guy that I've got a lot of information from, he argues this. You can go to his channel. I won't get into that. That's not the point of it. And I know in Egypt that Akhenaten tried it, but it failed. So we can't really include his sun god. But in this monotheistic culture, we actually believe that matter creates the mind. And that's a huge switch. That's a huge switch from mind and spirit creating matter, which the other religions would have believed that. This mono kind of worship has no other choice but to lead to the concepts such as World Order, in my opinion. It's a natural next step for a system that worships one all-powerful God. The rise of technology is great, and it keeps empires are fashioned and fueled by advancing technologies. They speak in literal terms, not in metaphors. They will often have mass events, violent sports, entertainment in order to control the population. You know what they say. Bread and circuses, eat and watch entertainment. And we are still like that today. They also have massive propaganda campaigns used against the population. The breads and circuses is just one form. Also, and here is the important part, that it's about the emergence of evil and the concept of evil and good and bad and heaven and hell. If you now have just one true God, there's only one God. There's not a variety. We don't speak in metaphors. We don't have multiple ways to explain things. You have one God. That's it. It there becomes there's only one absolute truth. That's the way of monotheism. So, and then it becomes, if you move away from the one God, you're moving away from the one truth. Therefore, you must be bad. So it becomes good versus bad. It becomes this very black and white concept where you can't explore any elements of yourself. And then hence this evil concept is created. The concept of heaven and hell gets created because you must be bad if you're moving away from the one true God in preference to all these other multiple gods. And I always find it ironic that the evangelists and the Christians think that they have to go back to, being religious and worshiping and going to church for this one God in order to fight the New World Order. By definition, this one God is the all-seeing eye. They're very similar, and by definition, this all one-seeing God leads to the progress of having a new world order, in my opinion. It's why I could never totally grasp it, and I was critical of it. Now, how they differed, so goddess culture, of course, understood distinctly that mind leads to matter. It makes more sense to me. I'm not suggesting that we should go back. I don't think we could ever go back to this goddess culture. I don't think we could ever go back and be like, suddenly, one woman's having sex with a whole bunch of men, because we don't need the population. And in fact, I think they're going to go in some other direction in the future, that women become irrelevant. I think that's their plan. They want to kill the woman and kill the sacred womb, the portal, and make fake portals. Seriously. So they understood distinctly that mind led to matter. They had a deep connection to the concept that they lived their daily lives close to this other world that layered with us. You'll see that with Druidism. The Halloween, this is what we're talking about when we talk about the history of Halloween. I talked about this and breaking the spells of things. They're just right there. Our ancestors are literally right there when they're gone. So they speak in metaphors. And that means like they're not literal. I'm not like, you hit me. That's literal. A metaphor would be Aries came into you and caused you to attack. Like I would use a metaphor to explain why you did an action. And I might even think you were influenced by the energy of that god. Okay. And dreams are relevant. Dreams are very relevant. They know that they're symbolic. They know the universe speaks in symbols and metaphors, and that they need to listen to that. They also have a really larger, more diverse concept of thought. They have a more diverse perception of the world. They have a more diverse explanation of things, more creative. And they have orality. Storytelling as education and information. Priests and wise folk were the database. They're an organic database, but they're not a rigid, matter-of-fact database. They are like a database of metaphor and wisdom and dreams. Now, in polytheism, they believed in fortune and fate. That meant the gods favored you or they didn't favor you. They also created the concepts of justice. Polytheism religions, especially in like earlier Greek, even earlier Roman, earlier Greek, believed we are controlled by the gods. Multiple gods influence us, and that they were very similar to us, but they were immortal. There was no concept of hell in either of these cultures, whether it was the goddess culture or polytheism. You did things to appease the god, not to avoid eternal damnation. You did things because you thought they were to your advantage and they would benefit your family and to make the gods happy, not because you thought you were going to hell. Hades wasn't a hell the way we perceive it. It was just an underworld place that you went when you died. It wasn't like a burning hellfire at all. So that's the three biggies. And that's how they differ. And so you can see monotheism. Thank you very much. Of course, again, you can see in monotheism how it would perceive these other religions, but it's not doing so. All this stuff didn't come out of a spirituality. All of this stuff developed out of the need for land and resources and women as resources. So women are no longer the sacred vessels. They're no longer a sacred womb that you worship. They're a resource that you must have, right? They're a resource that you've got to have along with your land so you can have people to till it. And it goes on and it becomes a hierarchy, a pyramid where the one on top has the most and the ones at the bottom have hardly anything. And this is why, like I said, was talking before, when you talk about the communists and the Marxists, they're talking about this stuff, but they don't respect the goddess womb either. They don't respect the goddess womb at all. Not at all. The modern feminists, Marxists, the queer Marxists, they don't want to have babies at all. They want fake artificial wombs, fake portals, and they want everything to live together in this sort of commune, but it's not going to happen. And it's probably not going to happen because of the reasons that it failed or it wasn't working originally, is because of men. So then that's why they want the transhumanism. So I figure the next step is some weird transhumanistic religion, or at least they're going to try, because if you go back to the mother goddess, you're going to have to contend with the same things, with men not having land, not having access to women. I mean, you see it now in a small strip where a lot of women are on Pornhub, and they're trying to access a lot of what big men who have lots of money, and a lot of the smaller kind of men who don't have a lot of money go without. You're starting to see this merge on the internet, but I don't think it's going to be successful. Best, yeah. Let's block that one. Block list. We don't need people advertising on here. So that is it. And you can see how monotheism becomes authoritarianism. Think of Star Wars. The Empire does out the Republic and becomes this treacherous empire. And you've got Vader, who becomes a Sith Lord, who is so separated from the original teachings of the Jedi, which is we're all one. We all flow with the universe. The power comes from that. They forget because because everything's literal. They don't believe that the matter comes from mind. They believe because they feel, and more we feel like we are the gods, we've conquered everything. Matter is here, and matter creates the consciousness. It makes zero sense to me that matter creates the consciousness, right? So then what happens next? I will get you guys the full, because that was a lot of that information I got from the video, from that predictive history, where he talked about the emergence of evil and the concepts of evil. And it was a good video. So Google predictive history. It's got a lot of interesting videos. Now, what comes out of that is that basically monotheism, as it gains more power and it shifts into the Catholic Church, it becomes always about land. Everything is about these same things, from agriculture, land, resources, people working for you. And you notice that the Catholic Church prevents priests from marrying. At first, they married, and the Catholic Church was absorbing different pagan religions, like the Romans did. They absorbed it and they put them in their as saints. They didn't call it pantheon, but they lost patience eventually. And it's not just because people wouldn't do what they want. They hardly noticed. We still have some of these pagan practices and even mother goddess concepts around. It always lingers. And they really didn't even notice this a lot. But it starts to become about when people start noticing how much wealth these people have and there's so many other people starving, right? They start to question these people who are presenting themselves at the top of the pyramid. They're corrupt now. There's no spirituality. It's all land, it's all numbers, it's all literal. No one's connected. You don't view this child as a spiritual thing from beyond and a blessing at all. So I'm going to put this video on where it's from a 1970s documentary, and she explains what she believes happened with the church and why they went so extreme on the witches in Europe and in the United Kingdom.
Very early on, as I say, the church, at least in this country, and to a great extent on the continent, took absolutely no notice of the survivals. The Roman Church very sensibly told them to adapt the old gods to become saints and to use the same places of worship, and they did to a great extent. They went along very well. Well, the church became more and more rich and unfortunately more and more corrupt. They also had this curious idea that everybody in the church must be celibate. So you had a hotbed of either people who were being celibate and were seething with misery and repressions, or people who were not and were therefore of a bad conscience. And the people began, after a while, to be irked by these people with so much money and so much in the way of possessions, when the peasantry and the majority were in a dreadful state of poverty and sickness and one thing and another. And there became murmurings against the church. Now the church became insecure and frightened, and they had therefore to build up some sort of whipping boy, and therefore all the minorities suffered.
There you go. So the church pretty much was becoming insecure because people were pointing it out. When we're seeing stuff like this today, where people are becoming insecure and they are lashing out and attacking countries because they are insecure, and they feel like when you're boxed into a corner and people are pointing out, hey, we're like, our village is starving, and you are, covered in gold and cups and have all the food, what's going on there? You start feeling threatened. And also, your corruption is being revealed. These people aren't spiritual, they're greedy. And the church is still greedy. And I know they'll present you with a pope that looks humble and doesn't have anything, but he's just a show. He's just a show. The guys in the back of the scene, they got lots. They got lots of gold. They got lots of artifacts laying around. The same goes with the Mormon church. It's greed. These are corporations. These are about distinct numbers. They are not about spirituality, because spiritual stuff does not focus solely on this. Yes, it understands you need to have food, you need to do certain things. And yes, there are sacrifices in these pagan religions. I'm not saying, oh yeah, go do that. But we today have sacrifices all the time. We just call it something else. Same with the Romans who were pointing out that the Gauls and all that stuff, they were sacrificing and they were horrid. A lot of it was probably propaganda, because the Romans sacrificed all the time. They just called it something else. Okay. They just called it something else. But yeah, so yes, people wanted land, and this would happen often when you had basis of greedy people who saw other people have stuff. They could just accuse them of this concept. Remember, monotheism brings about the concept of, if you're not going with the one God, you must be doing the bad thing, because the one God therefore equals one truth. There's only one way. It's very rigid. So if you don't do it, you are not doing the truth, and there's only one truth, and therefore if you don't do that, you're evil. There's a hell now. And these dynamics are created so then they can pinpoint people as going against that God. Therefore, you're our enemy. Therefore, we have the right to attack you. And the reason behind that all is they're trying to protect their hoards of wealth. They're trying to protect their land. That's why they wouldn't allow priests to marry. And they create this whole sexually dysfunctional class of priests, and they attract all sorts of weirdos and perverts, and people become sexually obsessed because they don't want their priests to have land, to get married, and to have children. Because once you get married and you have children, you have your own mini little empire. You have some power. You're saving up wealth, right? So that's a no, no, no for the church. The church, the people at the top, whether it's Medici's or an emperor, they have to have it all. And we're still running a similar structure. We're still running under monotheism, which is going out and attacking all sorts of different cultures, trying to absorb all their land and their wealth. Now, I know that's what communists are always saying, and Marxists, but their solution never works. And their solution doesn't work because we're in a monotheistic world. But as soon as they want to take over, it's not going to go back to the mother goddess because there's too many people. So you have to have this authoritarian rule, and you always have these paranoid rulers because they have to rule over so many people. The population is too big for the mother goddess. That's why you can only have it in little cults and little sects. It's not going to work anymore. Scary as it is, it's just, where does it end? Like, what is happening, and why extinguish these people? You extinguish these people to protect your own wealth, and you're getting rid of people who believe that women are sacred. You're getting rid of people who have the old database memories. They have the old wisdom. They have the organic, natural wisdom. You're getting rid of those people so that all that's left is children that you can program and people who already are afraid of you and believe in that one God. So no one will question how much you own because you're now the representation, the king or the priest or the pope. You are the representation of that one God. And you even have presidents today who will try to make it look like they're representations of it. Donald Trump is kind of doing that. He hasn't actually said it, but he's implied that he has a mission for God. That's really dangerous speaking, and it's a brainwashing. It's a massive death cult. And we too sacrifice. We sacrifice people all the time. I just want to show you this nice little clip. It's also part of that documentary, and the guy talks about, he's in the 70s, and you get to see that the old ways are still lingering in there, even in the 1970s with people in England before their culture gets totally modernized. And as technology goes on, this monotheistic culture just pummels and destroys these concepts of the old world. But I just want to show this little clip to you because it's very endearing.
Norman calls himself a witch and has a special interest in herbs. He lives near Oxford.
I was close to my father, and I found that after talking to him about here and hereafter, that he was a good Christian, not like me, and of course he said, well, nobody's ever come back to tell us. And I said, well, that's a pretty poor business. Would you try and come back? I mean, you're bound sure to die before me. And he said, yes, well, I don't see why not. So once you could get his word on a thing, I knew he would do his damnedest to do so. But still, that didn't help me any, because when he died, I missed him awfully. And after he'd been dead about 3 or 4 weeks, I still missed him. And I remember going to bed one night, and in the middle of the night, I woke up with a start and sat up, bolt upright, and there he was by the side of the bed. And I looked at him like that, and I said, goodness me, I thought you were dead, Governor. And he laughed, and he said, I think we know now, don't we? We know now, don't we? And his laugh, disappeared into the distance, and the sound went with it, and that was that. And I never missed him ever anymore after that. The real old Cornish people, like my grandmother, the Berries, were a very old Cornish family, and of course they had never really, I don't think, until they came down these parts of being very far away from the old Celtic beliefs, which were very, very strong. It just comes out. Perception, clairvoyance, clairaudence, all those kind of things. You read about them when you're quite young. I started to read when I was about 8, you see, and I you realise somehow or another that you're apart, a man apart.
From time to time, young people interested in witchcraft and the occult approach Norman and ask him for advice and training.
If they come to me, nowadays I always inquire their circumstances, whether they're married, single, or so on and so forth. Nowadays I like to get a glance at their palm and read that pretty thoroughly first. Make sure then that there's no snags nor trip-ups, because you want somebody that is pretty level-minded.
All right, there you go. He is showing you Mother Goddess beliefs, maybe even polytheistic beliefs, but definitely Mother Goddess beliefs where, you know, you have clairvoyant dreams, things come through symbols. These are the old ways. They were still around. They still existed, although not in the raw natural form. Now we're going to go in and start talking about the big taboo, which is sacrifice and child sacrifice, and how that was used against pagans by a monotheistic culture to, you know, say, hey, these guys are devil worshippers, they sacrifice children. And a lot of it was propaganda, some of it was true, but it was also hypocritical. It was extraordinarily hypocritical. And in this video clip, I'm going to show you the professor from that channel, the oh gosh, what is it? It's predictive history. You know, he kind of talks about how people would sacrifice. They, you know, like you knew the Druids would take all of the criminals or war prisoners and put them in the wicker cage and sort of burn them up. But like I said before, they believed that people came back. So they're kind of it was a clearing out. People came back. There was reincarnation. They observed the world around us. Trees came back, you know, things recycled, the seasons recycled. So humans would do that too. Now, of course, when you have a monotheistic religion, you're separated from that. You're separated from the planet. There's a God somewhere that's telling you all this stuff. You have to worship it. Really, you're worshiping these other human beings that are presenting themselves as special or special bloodlines or linked special or having authority over you, but you think it's linked to God, and you think they're representation to gods, and they don't want you to have this information. They don't want you to know that you have a spark of God, that you're part of the world, that it's all connected. They don't want you to understand that, because if you understand that, then they can't control you. David Icke says this all the time. And so let's listen to this little clip here where he talks about sacrifice. There's 2 clips, actually. We'll do one, take a pause, have a commentary, and do another. I chopped them up so they weren't so long. But he talks about sacrifice then and how we're still doing sacrifice now.
Nations were also famous for a particular type of sacrifice, which is child sacrifice. The Romans wrote histories insulting the Phoenicians for practicing this sort of sacrifice. But the Romans themselves practiced human sacrifice. What they would do is that after every major war, they would capture all the major leaders, all their enemies, and they would parade their enemies through the streets of Rome. This is something called a triumph. At the end of the triumph, they would gather enemies at the temple of Jupiter. Jupiter is their god. And then they would strangle to death their enemies. That's sacrifice. That's human sacrifice. They didn't call it that, okay? And they sort of disguised it, but we know for a fact that they did do this. So the question for us is, why is it that this happens? Why do the Aztecs do it? Why do the Phoenicians do it? Why do the Romans do it? And why is it today the Israelis do it in Gaza? And remember, okay, what the Israelis are doing is quite horrific, because it is really this sort of sacrifice. Why? Because 47%, almost half of the population of Gaza is under 18 years old. So the majority of people who are getting killed are in fact children. What is most striking or blatant about what's happening in Gaza is that we can all see it for ourselves. And it's almost as though the Israelis want us to see it and want us to hate them.
So there you have it. We still live in a world where sacrifice happens. We absolutely 100% do. We just call it different things. We say, oh, we're fighting for God, or oops, we dropped a bomb, or, abortion's okay in any circumstance, mass abortion, don't have families, just go do what you want. We still offer to whatever God that you say you have. And we call other cultures barbaric and hideous, yet we're like the biggest, strangest monotheistic culture that not only sacrifices, but it almost feels like an unstoppable force at this point. The technology is so great. It's like the Romans have nothing on what is out there today. The technology is so great, to come up against this really seems daunting. Like they talk about three-headed beasts in Revelation and all this stuff within. He's going to get into this and how why they're doing what they do. It's interesting. But I would say, if you're going to say the three-pronged headed, like all this Revelation stuff, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. You've got all these crazy people who are radicals who want the end of the world to come because they're very strange. And this is the thing about the monotheism. There's one way. There's one route. There's one way of looking at it. The Bible says it. Pick this one book. Here it is. It's going to end. It's going to end. And I would say, like, if you want to talk about the beast and the three, what's the three? Is it three horn? There's a big horn and little horn, or is it two horns? I can't remember because I don't obsess over the Bible, because it's written by men and it's divided and changed over time by people who want to control the system, a monotheistic system, and it's all about control. So, Constantine didn't adapt Christianity for shits and giggles here. He did it to basically hold together with an impeccable force a crumbling empire, because most of his subjects were probably turning to Christianity. So he did that and then repackaged it up under a Roman sort of authoritarian rule. And it just kept going under another guise. And that's why I say the politics, because everything is now about land and resources and war. It is that wrapped up in the religion. It's not the other way around. That's at least how I see it. If you see it differently, feel free to comment. But what is the three locations? It's London, the banking system, Washington, D.C. It's like, the head of the government. It's like the warmongering, the deep state war machine. And then there, of course, is the Vatican. That is the religious center. So you've got these three centers. And then Israel is strategic to that as well, 100%. So he's going to go into this and continue why this works, why sacrifice works, and what it does. And I want to remind me to get into this Trump stuff and the assassination stuff and that kind of sacrifice, because this is old school stuff that they're still playing out today, whether it's some kind of, black magic thing for them, or it's just something that works on human psychology. I don't know. But he's going to tell you why today the Israels are blatantly doing it in front of our faces and they don't care. Check it out.
Right? You can see all over the world, popular opinion is turning against Israel. You have these popular protests all around the world protesting what is happening in Palestine. If they really want to do this, right, there are actually much more effective ways of doing this. For example, you could just poison their water. Or you could poison the air so that everyone in Gaza gets a fast cancer, right? We have the technology to do this. So Israel could do it this secretly and no one would talk about it. And in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, the population of Gaza would all be gone. It would be a very secret, right? Instead, they choose to do this in front of the world. And my argument to you is that this is intentional. They want the world to hate them. Because by doing this, they create the ultimate taboo, right? We find this disgusting and contemptuous, so the entire world will unite against Israel. But guess what? That's what their religion wants. In the extreme form of Jewish eschatology, or the religion, they believe that at the end of the world, Israel will fight the entire world and God will help Israel triumph in the end. So what's really happening in Gaza is that there are extremists within the Israel government who want to accelerate the process of the end of the world, where Israel will face the world. And if you think about it, the entire idea of this ritual sacrifice is to unite the Israeli population. And what's extremely disturbing and horrifying about it is that this works. Why? Well, let's use an analogy, okay? The analogy is this. In Chinese history, the most popular military stratagem is to fight with a river behind your back. You guys have heard of this strategy.
He goes into this idea, fighting with a river behind your back. It's basically the odds are against you, right? Think of a 300 with Leonidas against think of that. So when you're fighting and everyone's together, and when you're in military, you're bonded, and they bond you like in Leonidas and 300, those kind of men were in the military. That's why they rough each other up, and there's all this, like, the older guys will pick on the younger guys. It's a sort of bonding, and so you're bonded together, and when the odds are against you as a military source, same with Israel, it bonds them together, and they'll fight till the death. They'll fight to the end. That's the concept behind this, and this happens all the time. It's also like when you're in these cultures and you choose a leader, like, it gets really weird because in polytheistic, they didn't have a concept of homosexuality at all. Like, men would have sex with each other. Sorry, guys, they would. Just because it was part of bonding, and they didn't see it as homosexuality or sexual preference. They bonded and they were at war together. So that was just part of their basic needs. And then marriage and children, that was a whole different element. So they saw it very different than we see it today. But all this strange bonding happens, and so you'll fight to the death for each other. And so Israel got these radicals who are trying to bring about prophecy, this monotheistic prophecy from the Bible, and they want the rest of the world to turn against him because it says that's what happens in the Bible. Unfortunately for them, they're not the original Semites. They're actually probably slaughtering the original Semites. And I was going to mention this about Trump because this is the new monotheistic empire. And I have very little faith Christianity gets us out of it, because it's by nature monotheistic, and it believes one God watches over us and rules. That's New World Order. That's the all-seeing eye. I mean, when you get to it. And they're literally bringing in Palantir, and they're all for it. They think they've won. And I think they did a similar tactic to MAGA. So MAGA, where it started out as Tea Party people, and then you had real MAGA people that were part of it. And this whole thing with Trump and the court cases, it gave MAGA the idea that they were battling something alongside with Trump, and they were backed into a corner. And I started to realize it looked like an act, like it looked like theater, because it was, and it was all set up. Not everybody knew it was all set up that was part of it, but it was. And so they're fighting this, and it's up and down and up and down and up and down. And then when he gets attempted to assassinate him, I thought it was crazy when the liberals were like, oh, that's just so nuts that it was like, I'm like, they're saying it's staged. That's nuts. But it is like, well, where'd it go? Why? Like, he looked fine. And it looked odd. I start to say, yeah, it does kind of look a little odd. But when you have a leader, if you have two leaders, if you have one leader that knows everything, is really smart, like I come here and talk about this, and they could do the job. And then you have some other guy who doesn't know all the information, but he's willing to sacrifice something. Or he chops his hand up in front of you. He uses that analogy. He's willing to sacrifice something of himself and then stand up and go, I'm strong. People will choose him as the leader. And the other guy can be his advisor because he's bonded you to him with that trauma of sacrifice. And I think that they bonded the followers to Trump, and then they've done that staged sacrifice, assassination, and then he pumps his fist, and that's it. Jim Jones would do stuff like that. That's it. That they've literally fought the villain. They're there. He's the strong guy. He's arisen from the attempted sacrifice. He's given up all this stuff. He hasn't really given up anything, to be honest. It's all acted out, and they're made to believe that. But anytime they do leaders, that they'll push this off, and then you'll follow him and you'll do anything. It's hard to break that bond. That's what happens with military people. It's hard to break the bond, and they'll sacrifice themselves for the whole group and die to save the rest of the group without even thinking about it because they're so bonded. And you could call that a trauma bond as well. But that's what's happening here. That's what happened in ancient cultures, but we're still practicing this type of weird sacrifice. Charlie Kirk, again, another sacrifice. He was really sacrificed, unfortunately, before the world, but he was a hero, he was a strong man, he was sacrificed. It's now bonding people to TPUSA, and now they're using it to track them and control them and monitor Christians to get a certain amount of them to support is not real. Just so you know. So it's that whole weird, there's one way, there's one track, there's one, that's why they think any kind of divination, if you pick up tarot cards or you're doing anything from the old world, it is evil because it defies the one rule. It defies the one truth. And you can only have one truth if you have one God. What is that? That sounds like a narcissistic abuse to me. It sounds crazy. And I think the younger people are seeing it because they're understanding more about narcissistic abuse. Baby boomers generally are, not all of them, but a lot of them are tied in, whether they're left or right. They're just right tied into this. And I mean, the best thing to do would just be to ignore Israel, but we can't because there's too many people involved. They control. Why do you think they control the media? They want you in their one narrative. It's all one way to go. Let's see if there's any comments going on here. Eric says a few minutes ago, thank you so much for this presentation. I found it to be very insightful. Well, thank you so much for showing up. Oh, Jonaside just got home. Thank you. And Kirby is in the house. The history of this is interesting. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to show you guys. Will pop me back in this screen. I wanted to look at that concept right here of the 3 stages, because what it shows you is how technology is pushing us and developing us, and it tells you why monotheism is coming after polytheism and the mother goddess. It's destroying that information. It is literally erasing it because it's threatened by it, because those people who are the old religion are noticing, hey, you guys don't really go with your Bible and you're preaching all these sermons, but you seem to have a lot of wealth and we're really hungry. And we're noticing that about our government today. And they're trying every trick in the book to fool us. I don't know where it ends. And I have a feeling there's another stage after monotheism. And it might have something to do with transhumanism, where we don't worship the God. We're incorporated into this system where we think we are God, but we just get merged into this mindless state. It's why I tell everybody, there's a reason why I tell people don't go to these events. Don't wear their logos, don't go to their events, don't go to things that with massive people that you're not sure, because like I told you, they take over you by when you're in these mass events, you're synced with the people. That's why they had these massive breads and circuses at the Colosseum. You're not an individual. The emperor can control you because when you're around people, they know we're connected. They don't want you to know that. They want you to believe you're this little thing underneath this monotheistic God. But we're all connected. So when we go to these events, we're going to start behaving like the other people. We become a hive mind, a one mind, right? You lose the variety when you're around, and they know, they've studied this today. They've studied soccer stadiums and how just a few people can trigger riots and change your behavior, and that there's madness in crowds. It's why I say don't wear their logos, because they're stamping you and they own you. You're now the one whatever. Don't give them money. You've given them enough of your time and your blood already. Don't give these politicians your money. Try not to wear logos. Sometimes I do, but try not to wear them. Don't go to the events. Stay away from these really extreme events. Terence McKenna would tell us to form our own subcultures. But like I say, the problem is once you form your subculture and they're aware of it, they'll absorb it. They absorb everything into the one. It's like we're a moth to a flame. It's like it sucks everything into this monotheism. And so my thinking is, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, is that the reason this is because our minds create the reality. Remember, mind creates matter. That's what the goddess nature believes. And so when our minds get distorted to believe monotheism, we create the reality that it's real and that it has so much power. And when there's so many people who believe it, it's bound to be the reality. It's hard to escape. You would have to spend a lot of time alone in the wilderness to undo it. We've all been trained. I think very literally. Very rarely do you hear me speak eloquently in metaphor. Very rarely do I, if I have an accident, I don't say, oh, by the gods of Jove, he possessed me and steered me wrong. I'm like, oh, I hit that car. I'm literal. We're very literal. We haven't got the same concept of that metaphoric, dream, symbolistic way of thinking that these early goddess cultures and even polytheistic cultures thought of. And we just don't get it. And our databases are literal. We want the facts, and there's only the facts, and that's it. Yeah, thank you for Orfeo Tresha said any successful subculture will be infiltrated and or handled into serving powerful players, if not simply the regime. That's what I said. My slogan is, and thank you for reaffirming that, is wherever we go, there they are. They'll just absorb it. You would probably have to have quiet conversations on your own and be by yourself. And they're going to try to put it in your mind so they can control everything. And they're getting rid of the sacred womb. They want to make robot wombs. And the communists who say they don't like this system are right in with the robot wombs. These females think that it's disgusting to have babies and be a baby holder, that they think of the baby. Their thoughts are so twisted. They see the baby as a parasite living off of them. And they're not. The baby and the mother relationship is symbiotic. It nurtures each other. The baby feeds the mother, stuff to help her immune system, and she gives it food. They work together. But they're so messed up. They can't see it that way. But yet they want this community living and everything, no hierarchy. But at the same time, they trash the sacred womb. They don't even have sex with multiple people to have babies. They have sex for having sex, and then they're left empty because they don't have a relationship. I don't necessarily think everything about these cultures were perfect either. I don't want to gloss it over and think, oh yeah, Mother Goddess was an easy time. It's probably one hell of a tough living time. It was probably filled with loss of children, dying from diseases or infections. And so every stage has its challenge. But there's this, I just think that they had more sense of the truth of nature because they lived so close to it and were so affected by it. And I mean, when they created agriculture, I can only imagine that was created to have more food stability. But still, it can be unstable where the crops fail. So all the things that they're doing is probably engineered to have it's all engineered to have your crops be successful, whether they're doing sacrifice. But remember, they believe that you come back. Christians don't believe that. Monotheistic cultures is like, nope, you're dead, you're gone, that's it. You're going to heaven or hell. So they switch it again, and so they're like, they're evil, they're sacrificing people, but they believe you recycle. And if you're evil or a criminal or you're a war criminal to them, you're going to come back anyway. So they're just, relieving you of your position, and you're now feeding the planet and the earth and regrowing it. That's how they saw it. Orfeo says, they perfected the baby parasite meme with the Alien movies, a monstrous giant fetus feeding, impregnating, etc. That's an alien. That's not a human. Human babies aren't aliens. It's sad that feminists think that way, but I think they've been brainwashed to think that way. And there is this devious attack on the womb, which is a sacred portal for souls to come in the form of human body to experience this realm. So that's my presentation for you guys on the stages, and why it was so important is the threat of the information. It's the threat of these people. They want the land, they want the power, they want the money, and they want more of it than they can ever use. It's unequally distributed. And you could say, well, that's because they work harder. These rich people don't work harder. It's because the system is set up so that they get it. It's all Ponzi schemes. It's all money laundering. It's all stealing our tax dollars. It's forcing us to pay taxes or we go to jail. It's a setup by laws, and laws are not necessarily moral. But what's the solution? Is the solution communism? No, I mean, a authoritarian monotheistic thinking system will just take over that, and the people will have no choice but to acquiesce. We know it's not the answer. It's not the answer at all. It's far from perfect. Special ideologies are not the answer. Honestly, if we could just, go back to our, having our individual freedoms and having the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, I think that's a pretty good start. But it's so corrupted, and it's been allowed to corrupt it because people have allowed their souls and their conscience to be bought out and sell it for money. I know maybe the devil is real. Maybe the devil is real. I don't know. What do you think? You guys can leave some comments here and let me know what you think. This PDF, it's just this is, of course, Western, very Western. China is a bureaucracy, so it's all stacked. You get your positions if your family is high in the bureaucracy, really. If you're poor, well, too bad for you. So the same thing as this, but this is 11-page presentation. It is up on the loyalty rewards page on Substack, melissadonharris.substack.com. You can become a member, or you can become a free subscriber, but it's showing you mother goddess, polytheism to monotheism. What comes after monotheism? I don't know. And does that destroy people who believe in God? I don't know. The Jews, Israel seems to think it's the end of the world, which I find rather strange. Or, maybe monotheism keeps going on for a while. But it seems to me that we're on this arc towards like some kind of cold, calculative hive mind that's been, masquerading as something else. Have you studied the Mothman? I have not studied the Mothman at all. Sorry, I haven't, although So I can't mention, I can't say it at large about anything about it because I haven't studied it depth. But this was really important to me because I think everybody keeps going on about how did we get here? Why are people attacking witches? Or, what is going on? And it's this progress over. I wanted to show this huge overview. So we really see reality in such a tiny spectrum, which is why, like I said, started the show showing this larger timescale perspective of the mother goddess, the polytheism, the monotheism, right? And then, of course, I narrow it down a little bit and we go back into why the church attacked the people in the UK. And we've got other developments, of course, going on there, where the printing press and propaganda, all these things play a part of it. I'm not sure if they had propaganda in the Mother Goddess times because they mostly relied on storytelling, cave paintings. Again, think of the Venus of Willendorf. Don't attack witches. I'm Ravenclaw. That's cute. The Venus of Willendorf. She's this big, pregnant statue, little tiny statue of a goddess. And so you had these cultures that knew that the woman was a special vessel for life to come through it. And now women are just these, it's absolutely crazy. Women are just like, get to work, for minimum wage. You'd get 2 or 3 weeks off with your baby in America. It's insane. It's attack against this really special process of bringing life. And it's to the point where men can be women and, you either get these men who hate women and want to pretend to be them because they hate them, or you get young people who are autistic and they're just confused and you have a system that brainwashes them to mutilate their bodies. They're confusing people. And my husband always thinks that this is the step to transhumanism. So maybe this monotheism changes to that. Is that the next step? You can tell me what you think in the comments if you're coming here after. But, this larger scale of time, if we even know what time really is, I'm using the time as we understand it, of course. I don't know if we fully understand how time exists, but, I do know, and I don't believe, and I'm going to finish this off, unless you guys have more comments or questions or what you want to add about witch hunting and persecution of which I'm sure there's lots to add. But I don't believe that a monotheistic religion society is going to stop us from the New World Order. It just, what I showed you of how the religions have changed, to me, it just leads to that. It was the step towards a New World Order. And once people dispel God, or more atheistic, and say God doesn't exist, so the one God doesn't exist, before that the pantheon of God doesn't exist, and before that the mother goddess is not important, she is just a person, and war is what matters. Once you expel all those things, where do you go? Yeah, where do you go? It's going to get more centralized, and you can see it every day where they're trying to kill. They'll say they want inclusivity, but there's no variety. There's limited people who write songs. Just think of thousands of years ago. Every village would have people doing entertainment. Technology has wiped that away, and it's wiping it more away. Now you have a handful of people who write music that sucks. Just that alone shows you that it's centralizing, and it's wiping out variety. It's probably wiping out creatures off this planet. And sacrificing, so we can have more than we ever need. And the elites, I mean, they have so much money. You think the Vatican was rich when it was first formed? You have no idea. These guys have so much money. We can't even fathom how much money they have to throw at it. Israel's throwing money at this like crazy. Imagine paying people $7,000 a post so they can spread propaganda for is not real. So they can do a genocide. And you may disagree with me. This isn't about Jewish people. This is about Netanyahu, this political leader, and his extreme government who believes that the Messiah is coming and it's the end of the world. And it's self-fulfilling, 100%. But I have no faith, and I think that's why a lot of people, there's a surgence in Christianity, by the way. And I predicted this during the pandemic that this would happen out of the trauma. And then this TPUSA stuff, where they've infiltrated TPUSA because Charlie Kirk was kind of turning on the Israel stuff, saying I've had it being manipulated by these people because they are insanely manipulative and psychotic even. It's just psychotic. They've infiltrated, and now they're gonna continue to, bankroll all these people, the people who are being led astray to think that monotheism is going to save them from the new world order. No, yeah, knowledge is power. But I'll tell you one thing that they do, because we think knowledge is power. They put so much information that's contradictory and confusing, so you can't tell the truth. That's a tactic too. The FBI and the CIA know this one very well. So we have the sacrifice, and I think Christians are like moths for a headlight, and they're not pausing, and they're not listening to their inner higher self. Maybe they don't have one. Maybe they're disconnected from it too long, and they're like the one Bible, the one thing, the one way, the one. Jesus is the only way. My Bible tells me that. My Bible tells me that. And I think it's being used to, I'm just like, well, they can't see that this one thing kind of mirrors the New World Order, one rule, central government. It's centralized. It's authoritarian. It is. And communism wasn't any better. I'm not. Cognitive dissonance is so real. Yeah. Well, if they heard half of the mega people that I hung out with, if they heard me saying this, they would lose their shit. They would do Bible quotes every day, and they would misquote them all the time and out of context. And they're using a Bible that has not only been changed multiple times through the year. Most of them were the Schofield Bible that has these, basically has rabbis telling you how to read a Christian Bible. Like, it just gets crazy. And I'm like, a man wrote that, and the Council of Nicaea decided what it was going to say and how you're going to see things. There's probably some truths in there. Like I said, they mix truth up with a whole bunch of other stuff, so you find it very confusing. And I think, like me and my husband said, the only thing we can really do is observe and try not to absorb it into ourselves and kind of get away from it. If we're in a feudalism, it'll be a neo-feudalism. It won't be like medieval times. I think medieval people probably had more mental freedom. There was witch hunts going on there, but I think it'll be a very different kind of feudalism. I don't think it will be the same. Orfeo, let's see what she says. If Christians actually have a form of triple God, then does the Father have a wife, the Son of the Mother? Well, they do. They have the Holy Trinity, and I think originally, because they say Father, Son, Holy Ghost. I believe it was probably originally a long time ago that said Father. It was more like Father, Mother, Son, because like I told you, the womb is the sacred place where the Spirit comes from, right? So I think that should be the Trinity. It's Mother, Father, Child. That's my opinion. It's their form of hijacking the Mother Goddess, in my opinion. Is there a corresponding feminine triple? I don't know. I know the Greeks had the Fates. It's kind of dark. Well, it's presented dark, but it's not. Like I told you, the Greeks and those polytheists, they believed in fate. And they believed that the gods decided your fate. And so you had to do things in favor of the gods. Kings, knights, lord, peasants. Yeah, it's all echoing the same thing. It's just neo-feudalism. It's crazy. And I don't think it's how the universe really is. I'm not saying I know how the universe really is, but I think this idea that we're connected to and the woman is a portal, that doesn't mean I'm saying the woman is all of creation. Because obviously the woman in the goddess times, like I told you, she's represented as the bird. Let's go back here. We'll do this before I sign off. Where is this? That's the bull energy. This is the mother goddess phase. And the mother goddess is represented as the bird. The male version is the bull. The bull and the bird come together. Now, this is before Greek mythology. This is more into the mother goddess, time, where they had like cave art. You probably see horses and bulls and stuff like that drawn on caves. They didn't have an alphabet. They didn't have a language. In polytheism, you start seeing written languages or hieroglyphs developed, right? Yeah, women are the most powerful when you think about it. Well, women are the most powerful in that creative term. Obviously, men in this physical world are very powerful. That's why they became in charge with polytheism, because they went to war to protect the land. And then they were rewarded land in the women to do that. Instead of you having a woman who had many male partners to produce lots of children, you started to have a man that had a woman and land, and she had to belong to him. That was his reward for going to war. He now wasn't just a male on the outside of this culture that couldn't mate. He was a man who had a wife, so to speak. That's how it went. So you got the mother goddess and the bull. And this makes sense to me. Not that I think, women should I don't want it so that women lay down and, 10 guys just gangbang her. That's not what I'm talking about. But the idea that the woman's womb is a portal, it makes sense to me, and that matter arises from mind and spirit. Otherwise, where do the ideas come from? They come from the mind. They come from thinking. They don't just poof there, And so monotheism is controlling the spirit section of it. It wants you to think everything's solid, everything's literal, because it wants to control how you think. If you realize differently and you are mother goddess era, you realize that your mind forms things and you can take control. The system that we live in, this one god authoritarian system that wants all the land and the money and the wealth and the resources, they don't want you to think that way. They don't want you to know how your mind is controlling. I've talked about this so many times on this podcast, time and time again, about our minds being powerful. And I think that's where I'm going to sum this one up. Yeah, birth and death are the ultimate portals. That's inarguable. 100%. 100%. Now we're going to have robot wombs. And they've already made an egg out of a skin cell. So I think they just want us to be obsolete. They want it to be a synthetic controlled portal, like a machine portal. They don't like the organic portal. Yucky to them. Get rid of those women in their portal wombs. Creepy old females. Well, it's very bizarre. And this presentation just shows you why I don't have faith in any monotheistic religion to relieve us of any of these New World Order problems. And I feel sorry for Christians who think that way. It's, like I said, when you're not into independent thinking, you want the simple way of thinking and you want to cling to that because it gives you the security. You're not going to stray far from what you were taught all your life. And I hear that, Candace say you have to be righteous. You have to be righteous. And I'm not so sure because when I think righteous, I think of some holy roller bullshitter. You have to be righteous. I think you just have to be honest. And like my husband said, we have to vibrate higher. And you have to realize this information that you're a portal. I don't know what the man equivalent is, but he's connected to through the woman to the spiritual world. So there you have it. All out of the creation of agriculture. And it might just be a process that, like it or leave it, we have to go through. And too bad for us. All right, you guys, I got to tie this one up. It's getting late, but I appreciate everyone joining. I loved talking about it. Remember, go and check out that YouTube channel. He's got some interesting videos. I do want to do a critical video of him, but we'll plan that for another time because there was a video I saw of him where I was like, I didn't like. But that's another place and another time and another topic. I want to thank you guys for showing up. You can check out that guy's channel that I showed the clips of. It is predictive learning or predictive history. I think it's predictive history. So check it out. And also, of course, I encourage you guys to go to the Substack, melissadonharris.substack.com. Subscribe for free. Lots of free content there. Leave a comment, thumbs up, share, add it to a playlist. It all helps my channel grow. And please help the Substack grow. I'm glad YouTube notified YouTube Pirate Ship. We did it a little earlier. Like I said, before I pop off, this is a graph showing when people are active, and it's Wednesdays and Thursdays. So I may move the Tuesday shows to Thursdays at 5, right in this area here. So this is when y'all are active, but I'm going to keep the 7 o'clock on the Thursday. So I might move this up because this is telling me when y'all are here, and I want you to be here. I want to get the audience rolling, and we usually get about 10 people, but it would be nice to have a little bit more energy, a little bit more rolling. Cool stuff. Sums up humanity. Yeah, and you just have to, once you realize it, once you see all this stuff, it gets harder for them to control you. But like I said, wherever we go, there they are. You literally have to, like, if they see this, they know my plan. I just literally have to unplug from all of it, put my phone down. If everyone put their phone down and put everything down and didn't use it for a while, it would collapse. Like, they would be in big trouble. But no one's going to do that. I don't have faith that they will. There's too many people, and they're not organized well enough. And they don't understand their own psychology. And that's what this show is about on Tuesdays, is to understand our psychology. So go back and look at the other shows. Hexes, spells that break the spell that binds you, the system hexing you, where I talk about how they control us. You'll see, you'll understand it. But once you see all the programs they put on you, it gets harder and harder for them to program you. They'll try other ways, but you'll be like, you'll spot it everywhere. And you just unplug from this internet for a while and go for a hike and participate in real life. And remember, we're much more than these things under some monotheistic God. We're connected to that spiritual world, and they're trying to keep us disconnected. So thank you so much, guys. I'm going to tie this one out, and I will see you guys. I don't think I'm going to have a Tuesday show. I have a lot to do, but there's definitely going to be a Thursday show next week, a Q&A, and then 2 Halloween shows the week after. So we got some great guests coming up. So we will see you then, and cheers. I would like to thank all of you for participating on the live stream tonight and chatting and leaving your comments and your opinions. It helps the show grow so much. Remember, you can also support the show by giving us a thumbs up, subscribing to the YouTube channel, sharing the content, and of course, adding it to a playlist or leaving commentary if you come post-stream. Also remember, you can support me by subscribing either free or paid on Substack at melissadonharris.substack.com, and go ahead and visit the website for all of the links and more information at melissadonharris.com, and I will see you next time on Velvet Bite Radio.